What's up, members of the Barrio? It's John. I'm in Fort Lauderdale for the weekend, and because it is so humid outside that you've got to take about 3 showers a day just to survive, I've decided to make an indoor video tackling the great debate, Airbnbs versus hotels, because I'm actually spending 2 nights at each. Perfect timing, right? If you want to keep up with all of my adventures from around the world and learn some useful travel tips as well, make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any new videos. Let's get started, and the first thing that everybody's always concerned about when you look at Airbnbs versus hotels is price. Now, on the surface, I'm gonna give Airbnbs the edge here because not only can you rent your own apartment, which I'm doing right now, but you can also rent a room in a shared apartment, and there's even more budget options. I've seen the ability to, for example, rent a tent in somebody's backyard, and that's something you can never do with a hotel. Now, on the flip side, I find that nicer hotels tend to cost more than your average Airbnb in most cities. You do have the option of using points to book hotels, which you can't do with Airbnb. For example, we're staying at this really nice room at the PGA Resort in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and I spent just 9,000 Chase Ultimate Reward points per night to book it. Another cool thing about hotels is that sometimes you will find sales on a brand, on Expedia.com, and I've never seen a site-wide sale on Airbnb. Let's talk amenities, and this is where Airbnbs tend to shine for me. Not only does this apartment in Fort Lauderdale have a living room and a full kitchen, as well as a washer and a dryer, but even for somebody like me who's not a good cook, just having the ability to scramble eggs in the morning, or if I'm feeling adventurous enough to try to cook some dinner, can save you a lot of money, especially if you're staying in a really expensive country, let's say somewhere in Western Europe. Alright, so you don't have the option to cook food at a hotel, but what we do have here is an on-site restaurant, and most hotels typically have places you could walk to nearby. So if you're okay being lazier and spending more money, hotels usually work, and one advantage to hotels, which you'll never get at an Airbnb, is room service. I like to order a Cobb salad. One of my favorite things about Airbnbs is location, because many times they're located in more residential areas than hotels are. Hotels generally tend to be clustered all in one spot. So if you're interested in exploring a particular neighborhood in the city and there's no hotels there, you can generally find an Airbnb pretty close by. Then again, unless your Airbnb host is super informative and helpful, staying at a hotel typically does give you the option to have a concierge who can provide you with a list of things to do and brochures. So if you want to have your hand held a little bit more in a new city, hotels are definitely the way to go. The length of your stay is also a very important factor in deciding between an Airbnb and a hotel. For a longer term stay, I generally would pick an Airbnb. I mean, what better way to feel like a local than having your own apartment in a really cool neighborhood. Now, another tip that I discussed in my first Airbnb video was how you can contact hosts in advance and try to negotiate a price for a monthly rental. A lot of times they are going to be willing to bring that price down to ensure long-term occupancy of their place. On the flip side, for a shorter stay, generally anything under 2 or 3 nights, I tend to prefer staying at hotels because there's just more to do on site, and I've also been using points to pay for it. One great perk to Airbnbs is the amount of space that you get. This is the living room area just by itself. Got plenty of space and a humongous TV. We've also got 2 bedrooms down the hallway. Alright, Airbnbs definitely win on space. This is a room, but it's just a room. I knew I should have upgraded to that suite. Let's talk about one thing that's really bothered me lately about Airbnb, and that's what I call the petty negative reference. Now, this has all started, in my opinion, because a lot of guests are expecting too much from these apartment rentals, and they're starting to write really dumb things on hosts' profiles. So in return, hosts are starting to get very petty about what they expect out of you, and I'm gonna give you a great example from my last Mexican trip, and I cannot make this up. We got a negative reference because we did not make the bed before leaving the apartment. Let me repeat that. We did not make the bed. Isn't the whole point of not making the bed so they can more easily just wash everything? Maybe she was going to leave the sheets and comforter like that for the next guest. I don't really know. We contacted Airbnb about it. They weren't willing to do a thing. I've heard other people getting negative references for things that they didn't even do. And that's one thing about the whole Airbnb reference system that is really starting to bug me. The glory of staying at a hotel is that generally you're anonymous, and that unless you have an all-night booze fest and start throwing things out onto the street, you're probably not gonna have any problems, but I am not recommending that sort of behavior for my viewers. Let's talk internet here, especially for you business travelers out there. And at an Airbnb, first of all, you are never gonna have to pay for Wi-Fi internet. Second, you're generally gonna find faster internet speeds at a private residence than at a big hotel where you're sharing that Wi-Fi with hundreds or even thousands of other people. Then again, depending on where you're staying, most hotels do come with a desk to work at, and they also have business centers where you can make copies and print stuff. There isn't one right answer here. Some people do better at hotels, others do better at Airbnbs. If you're like me, maybe you like both of them. For a short-term stay or for a stay where I can utilize points or a big sale, I'm gonna pick a hotel. For a long-term stay, I'm definitely going to be taking an Airbnb. It's those 3 to 7 night stays where sometimes I'm just not sure and I've got to take it on a case-by-case basis. Guys, leave me some comments down below. Tell me, do you prefer staying in Airbnbs or hotels and why? And give me some examples. I'm also going to be leaving a coupon down below. If you want to register for your first Airbnb stay, you will get $40 off. If you're new here, please subscribe and pound that like button. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys learned a lot. And make sure to stay tuned. I've got a lot more content coming out from New York City and beyond. Peace.